Today we have the autobiography of Malcolm X, an articulate public speaker, a charismatic personality, an indefatigable organizer, and a Muslim, el-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz. Now, this was one of the most important books I've read in my life because thanks to him, I began learning about my religion, Islam, and finding out what my purpose in life is.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh yes, I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
The Autobiography of Malcolm X, published in 1965, recounts the life of Malcolm X from his traumatic childhood plagued by racism to his years as a drug dealer and pimp, his conversion to the Nation of Islam faith while in prison for burglary, his subsequent years of militant activism, and the turn late in his life to a more orthodox Islam. Before I get into it, I just want to thank all the references I've used. I have a bunch of notes I've gathered from what I can remember. Key thing here, this is just an insight, guys, so if you want to learn more about his life, definitely read the Autobiography of Malcolm X, which Malcolm and Alex Haley worked on, his writer, and he really tried to capture as much as he could in those final years of his life about how he can convey his entire life in a message, and I think they did a great job. Honestly, I think they did a great job at conveying his life. So let's get into it. As a normal autobiography, it starts off from the beginning years, and he had quite a traumatic beginning because he lost his father and his mother at a young age, and he lost his parents in a traumatic way. It's traumatic enough and bad enough to have your mother and father pass away while you're a kid, but the way it happened to him was something one shouldn't experience. He was an orphan, and going into his school years, he had seen racism up front, and from the years of 1920 to 1960, racism was very apparent in America. And it's not like something today where everyone hides their racism because it's not the social norm anymore. 100 years ago, it was very normal.
Malcolm's school ambitions were crushed by a white teacher who told him to be realistic about being a nigger and forget about being a lawyer and learn to do something with his hands instead. And so he floundered. He went to Roxbury, Massachusetts to live with his sister Ella.
Very normal, so he seen it up front. Malcolm was introduced to modern black culture in Roxbury and Harlem. He had seen what it's like to be black in Harlem and experienced that, which led to his ongoing years and what was to come for him. He had a job, but once he lost his job, Malcolm took up a life of crime in 1940s Harlem. And the thing about the criminal life and committing sins is that everyone makes mistakes, and it could be a thing that you misunderstood certain aspects as you were younger, or it was peer pressure. But I don't think it's fair to judge another man's mistakes and sins unless you address your own mistakes and sins. And in many cases, certain things people do, that's between them and God. That's between them and Allah. So I don't think you should be quick to point the finger unless you start to address your own mistakes first. Malcolm's criminal activities finally landed him in prison, where he had a profound awakening. Religion in prisons are very inherent and prominent for many reasons. 2 reasons being your detachment from society, because being away from people makes you ponder, makes you think more, because you have a lot more alone time to question your life and to question what is the purpose of your life and where do you go after you die.
Before I get involved in anything nowadays, I have to straighten out my own position, and which is clear. I am not a racist in any form whatsoever. I don't believe in any form of racism. I don't believe in any form of discrimination or segregation. I believe in Islam. I'm a Muslim. And there's nothing wrong with being a Muslim. Nothing wrong with the religion of Islam. That just teaches us to believe in Allah.
And the other reason being, you are more prone to accept death because of the lack of activity in your life. For example, me and you probably have busy lives. Every week things are going on, work, school, activities, and month by month things go by, but because you're busy, you don't really think about death too much. But if you're in a 1-by-1 cell and every day feels the same and you have a lot of alone time, you will start to accept death more because you realize that if this is going to be the rest of my life for the next 30 years, I'm going to accept death. And that is the other reason. However, Malcolm left prison dedicated to the Nation of Islam and ready to spread its message.
When I was in the Black Muslim movement, they didn't have the real religion of Islam in that movement. It was something else. And but the real religion of Islam doesn't teach anyone to judge another human being by the color of his skin. The yardstick that is used by the Muslim to measure another man is not the man's color, but the man's deeds, the man's conscious behavior, the man's intentions. And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong.
This topic of the Nation of Islam is something you should listen to. Some great speakers of Islam that talk about this. For example, Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk's YouTube channels of One Message Foundation. He talks about the credibility of the Nation of Islam and their lack of credibility. So at the core, they don't follow the teachings of Allah and the Messenger, peace and blessings be upon him.
Myself, because I was shook up, and they admitted to me that Elijah Muhammad was the father of their children, and I took it to him. And it was at that time he told me that he was Muhammad, the prophet, and that Muhammad had 9 wives. He also told me that he was David, he was the modern David, and that he was the modern Solomon, and that it was meant for him to fulfill today all of the things that they did back there.
The attention Malcolm X received eventually led him being at odds with the Nation of Islam. And the leader of the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, did not like Malcolm X's growth because he was starting to outgrow the Nation of Islam. So he used an opportunity to silence him, which is one of his statements against John F. Kennedy.
And it was their fear that if I remained in the black Muslim movement, and this came into the knowledge of his followers, that they would leave him and follow me. So a plan immediately was set in motion to take me down, put me out, and the statement that I allegedly made, or not that I allegedly made, I did make it, the statement that I made about Kennedy was used as a pretext to take me down. But in reality, it was because I had come to New York and told Joseph, the captain in New York, and the secretary and the minister in Boston, about these children that Mr. Muhammad had. And it was that right there was the real reason for my being out of the movement.
Did you get out of the...
And that really caused a very strong disliking between the two. Later on, Elijah Muhammad's son had discussed with Malcolm X about acts that his dad was doing that were not good at all. They were quite disturbing. And that led to the separation between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam.
Who is the father of all of these various children whom you have enumerated?
The first one to tell me who the father was Wallace Muhammad, and he told me that the father was Elijah Muhammad himself. Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls, 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretaries. 4 of them had 1 child apiece by him. 2 of them had 2 children, and one of those 2 is pregnant right now in Los Angeles, where they're his 3rd child. And the one who first made me aware of this was Wallace Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son. Was still busy doing the same thing. He hadn't stopped. 2 of the sisters had 2 children by the same man, and one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the same man. So when it was known among the Chicago officials that I had a knowledge of this, they become very fearful of me. They became very antagonistic toward me, and they had to do something to diminish the authority that I had, for fear that if this became public knowledge, the followers would leave the Muslim movement and follow me. And it was at that time that they used the statement that I made against President Kennedy as a pretext to cut my authority, and some other things happened that finally produced the split, or forced the split.
Malcolm went on a pilgrimage, and that opened his eyes to Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, I've broadened my scope. Travel broadens your scope. It gives you a wider understanding. And I have, in my many lectures on college campuses, seen many whites, even as a black Muslim, whose reaction to much of what I had to say showed me that they were genuinely concerned. Some weren't genuinely concerned, but many of them were. And this element is increasing.
But that's a considerable change of opinion in Malcolm X.
No, today I'm speaking for myself. Formerly I spoke for Elijah Muhammad, and everything I said was Elijah Muhammad teaches us thus and so. I'm speaking now from what I think, from what I have seen, from what I have analyzed, and the conclusions that I have reached.
And the white man is no longer the devil, and he is no longer bound to be evil.
The Holy Quran teaches us to judge a man by his conscious behavior, by his intention. And my reason for going to Mecca was to get a better understanding of the religion of Islam and what the Quran teaches. So I judge a man by his conscious behavior. I am not a racist. I don't subscribe to any of the tenets of racism.
He really saw a different light to Islam and a different light to life, that it's not just about black people versus white people. It's really about, at the core, what do you believe? And it's not just about your race.
And there are good whites and good blacks and bad whites and blacks.
It's not a case of being good and bad, good or bad blacks and whites. It's a case of being good or bad human beings.
And once he came back to the United States, he came back with a new agenda of spreading the true message of Islam and how to follow the true teachings.
While I was at Mecca, making the pilgrimage, I spoke about the brotherhood that existed at all levels and among all people who were there on that Hajj, who had accepted the religion of Islam. And I pointed out that for what it had done, what the religion of Islam had done for those people over there, despite their complexion differences, that it would probably do America well to study the religion of Islam, and perhaps it could drive some of the racism from this society as it has driven racism from the Muslim society. And with Muslims who themselves would be classified as white in America. But these particular Muslims didn't call themselves white. They looked upon themselves as human beings, as part of the human family, and therefore they looked upon all other segments of the human family as part of that same family.
However, once he returned, he was pretty much a dead man.
I first received threats on my life in January, when it first became known that I had come back to New York and told the captain of the fruit in New York, who was my right-hand man formerly, and also the secretary of the New York Mosque and the minister in Boston. When it became known that I had told them, then an effort was made to shut me up. And
by what means?
Well,
from death threats to shootings to house burnings to slander to his eventual demise.
If you'll notice, they used their newspaper to slander me and to label me as a hypocrite and as a rebel. And Mr. Muhammad himself said that I defected. Well, in reality, I never even left the Muslim movement. They put me out. And they put me out because of what I knew. And what I knew was told to me by Mr. Muhammad's son, Wallace Muhammad himself. They put me out and they put him out. And I had stated in a newspaper article about an effort to take my life back in January, and at that time the Muslims denied it. In fact, they tried to make it appear to my brother that I was insane. But on a program in Chicago called Hotline, was moderated by Wesley South, John Ali, the national secretary, admitted, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, one of these days last week, that they absolutely were going to kill me.
Why are they threatening your life?
You mean he was going to kill you?
Oh, yes. One of them was, an attempt was made to get one of them to wire my car with an explosive. That one is with me right now. I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad.
Though Malcolm X was at peace with the possibility of dying, his murder was a tragic loss. However, this is not what I remember him for. I remember him for being a great husband, a great father, a family man, a leader, inspirer, a captivating speaker, a seeker of truth, and most importantly, a Muslim. Thank you, Malik.
Never have I witnessed such sincere hospitality and overwhelming spirit of true brotherhood as it is practiced by the people of all colors and races here in the ancient Holy Land, the home of Abraham, Muhammad, and all the other prophets of the Holy Scriptures. Never have I been so highly honored. Never have I been made to feel more humble and unworthy. Who would believe the blessings that have been heaped upon an American Negro? A few nights ago, a man who would be called in America a white man, a United Nations diplomat, an ambassador, a companion of kings, gave me his hotel suite, his bed. Never would I have even thought of dreaming that I would ever be the recipient of such honors. Honors that in America would have been bestowed upon a king, not a Negro. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Sincerely, el-Hajj, Malik, el-Shabazz.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون.